Patriot Network TV. Now, we're going to talk real quickly here about subsidies and taxation in the United States and give you a little historical perspective on that. But before I do that, I want to urge you to be going to Patriot Network TV. Quan works like a crazy man to keep this network in place. I'm cruising back and forth between my cancer treatments, and not to play the cancer card too hard, but you know, we're trying our hardest. So you got to go over and watch it. You got to share it with your friends. You got to support us by watching. Okay. So there's now that I do enough guilt.
There's no money being made here.
We're not making any money. And any of you, if you're swimming through $100 bills, write a check, send it to Quan. He can use the money. He can, we need new equipment, but that's a separate story. Have government subsidies ever worked in the past? Our friend Bert Folsom, who is one of the truly great and talented history professors in the United States, outlines in his book, The Myth of the Robber Barons, how federal government subsidies have always failed. Now, George Washington, founder of America, the father of the country, the first president, all the things. I love George Washington. This is not, nothing negative about George, but in the 1790s, Washington became convinced that we needed to subsidize an American fur company in the American Northwest so that we could prevent the British from encroaching on American territory and encourage trade with the indigenous peoples. Now, unfortunately, our subsidy to this fur company did what? It encouraged waste and discouraged creativity. Now, have you ever heard that before with a subsidy? Can you say Solyndra? It never changes. Federal government subsidies encourage waste and discourage creativity. So when we had a subsidized American fur company, it failed and failed miserably. And if anything, it caused more problems with the Indians and gave more of an inroad to the British than it was designed to prevent. But the good news is the great American entrepreneur, John Jacob Astor, went out and started the American Fur Company with no federal subsidy and built a larger, more efficient company and extended it throughout not just the American Northwest, but the nation. The government-run company, by contrast, eventually went bankrupt and disbanded. Can you say Solyndra? It's always been this way. But even more importantly than understanding that federal government subsidies don't work, part two of the federal government subsidy is this. In 1790 or in 2013, the only way for the U.S. federal government to give $1 to one person is to first go take it from someone else. Taxes are inalterably linked to subsidies. For President Obama to pick his friends, and we went through this before, but the folks who bundled money to the Obama campaign, for every dollar they raised for Obama, they got $40,000 in subsidies. Okay, it was a great deal for them. It was a bad deal for us. Can you say Solyndra? So the idea here is very simple and straightforward. There is nothing to be gained by subsidies. They don't work. They've never worked. They didn't work in 1790. They won't work in 2013. But what is even more shocking, and by the way, if you have any doubt about this, go get Professor Bert Folsom's book, The Myth of the Robber Barons. Read chapter 1. Chapter 1 lays out the failure of Edward Collins to build a transatlantic steamship line with federal subsidies because Cornelius Vanderbilt pushed him aside and built, without any subsidies, a much more efficient, much more practical, much more service-oriented business. Now, if you think this through, you've got to understand that not only do the subsidies fail to do what they're intended to do, the American Fur Company doesn't take off because of subsidies. The steamship company doesn't take off because of subsidies, but also it needlessly raises taxes. In this campaign, President Obama said repeatedly that the wealthiest 1% of Americans don't pay their fair share. That is a lie. the most recent IRS data, which by the way is 2007, 5 years behind schedule, almost 6 years behind schedule, you can get the full data set for 2007, which ought to tell you how ineffective the IRS is. But the 2007 data says the richest 1% of Americans earned 22% of national personal income, and they paid 40% of all national personal income taxes. The top 5% earned 37% and they paid 61%. The top 10%, and this is what I want you to focus on, the top 10% of income earners in America earned 48% of national personal income and they paid 71% of all personal income taxes. The bottom 50% earned 12% of personal income and paid 3% of personal income taxes. So, for this argument of fairness to be proper, you'd have to be in a situation where your earning was in excess of your share of income tax. And the opposite is true. Earning 22% of national income, the top 1% is paying twice as much in income tax. They pay 40% of the federal personal income tax while earning 22% of national income. The bottom 47% of income earners pay 0 federal income tax, and the top 10% pay 71% of federal income tax. Now, is it fair to have, and think about this in terms of 100 people. You got 100 people, all supposed to be treated equally under the law. 47 of them pay 0 income tax. The richest 10, the 10 who are the most effective, the most efficient, the most productive, pay 71% of the taxes. Ask yourself if that's the way to run the railroad. Would you have a sports team where the lowest producing 4 guys on the team do nothing, no home runs, no bases, no balls, no errors, nothing. They produce nothing. And the top 10% of guys produce 71% of the home runs, the base hits, the ribbies, and everything else. You couldn't have a sports team that functioned that way. You couldn't have a business that functioned that way. One of the reasons that the U.S. federal government is systematically bankrupting the country is simply they're trying to do something that isn't possible to do. They are trying to run a country where the top 1% pay more than 40% of the income tax. That won't work. We tried it. We've done it before. It didn't work then. It won't work now. As we go forward, be sure and tell your friends the fairest thing to do would be to make the 47%, the bottom 40%, 47% of income earners pay something. $10, $20, $100. Pay $1 a month. Pay $12 instead of 0, $1 a month. And keep in mind that bottom 20% get the earned income tax credit. We pay them to be economically inefficient. It won't work. We're on an unsustainable path, to borrow one of my favorite phrases from the environmental community. This cannot stand. So we're in a situation now where we've got 3 times the per capita debt that the citizens of Greece have. You see Greece on TV every day with the fires and the riots and the floods, okay? We're 300% worse, and we're talking about borrowing $1 trillion a year for as far forward as you can see. Won't work. God bless this country. God bless you.